every time you go to sleep, it essentially refreshes your brain and makes room for new memories to come in. Basically, the way that your memory works is as you're awake throughout the day, you're getting all this new information. And all this information is going into your hippocampus. That is a region in your brain. And your hippocampus is important for short-term storage of your memories, but it cannot retain this information for a long period of time. And also the other problem with your hippocampus is that it has a limited storage space. So if you overwhelm it, either you're going to overwrite other important information, kind of like a camera roll or something like that, or you're just not going to be able to take in all the information. So what happens is when you go to sleep, it basically refreshes this and it makes room in your hippocampus for newer memories to occur again. And what studies are showing is as someone goes to sleep, your brain will basically shift this information from your hippocampus to a more long-term storage center, which is in your cortex region of your brain. And this is how you basically free up information in your hippocampus, and you also store your memories into a more long-term storage center. Basically, you can think of your hippocampus as this tiny USB stick, and you can think of your cortex as a large external hard drive. And this is where you can start to use this knowledge to help you throughout the day. So one way this can help you is by napping. So one study was done and it was looking at daytime naps, and it was looking at healthy adults, and they were separated into two groups, either a group that napped or a group that did not nap. And they wanted to see, first, if they learned something, then later in the day, if their learning capacity was improved after they took a nap. In other words, they wanted to see if they were able to learn new things better if they had napped earlier in the day. So the study was done at noon, and the participants had to look at 100 pairs of people's faces and their associated name. And then later in the day, the participants had to do another round of the same type of learning. But in between them, either one group would stay awake the whole time, and the other group actually took a 90-minute nap. And what they found is the group that stayed awake throughout the whole day, they actually had a much worse learning capability compared to the group that napped. So when you look at the group that napped, they actually had a 20% increase in their learning ability compared to the group that stayed awake. So researchers were also looking at people's brain waves during the study, and they found that this memory refreshment was specifically related to your stage 2 NREM sleep. So if you remember from before, your stage 2 NREM is not your deep sleeping stage. That's actually more on the lighter sleeping side. And specifically, this memory improvement was associated with things called sleep spindles. Sleep spindles are basically these really powerful bursts of electricity on people's brain waves. And what they found is the more sleep spindles someone had, the more their ability to learn the next time around was. So if you had more sleep spindles, it was easier for you to learn new things. So this is just a side note, but another cool function of your sleep spindles are that they can protect your brain from external sounds. So the more powerful sleep spindles that you have, the harder it is for you to wake up from external sounds. Now, another cool thing that these researchers found was they found these pulses of brain activity that would go between your hippocampus and your cortex. And this is what they realized was basically your brain was transferring this information from your hippocampus or your short-term storage center to your cortex, which is again, your long-term storage site in your brain. And this is how people would wake up and they'd be more refreshed and able to learn new information because their hippocampus would be clear of any information. So now if you look at someone who's struggling to learn new information, this could be an explanation why. If they're not able to generate enough sleep spindles, they're probably going to have a harder time learning the next day. And this is exactly what happens with seniors. Seniors have a harder time generating sleep spindles than younger, healthier people. And again, there have been studies showing this as well. So they took senior citizens and they checked their sleep, and they found that the fewer amount of sleep spindles they saw in these elderly people, the harder it was for them to learn new information the next day. So this is one key thing that you can start to do, which is to start improving the amount of sleep spindles that you're getting every single night. But how can you do that? Well, you get the most concentration of your sleep spindles in the last 2 hours of your sleep cycle. So know that I mentioned that your last hours of your sleep is associated with more REM sleep. So basically how it works is towards the end of your sleep, you have these long bursts of REM sleep, but then in between those bursts of REM sleep, you have these very short bursts of deep NREM sleep, but those bursts of NREM sleep have a ton of sleep spindles. And those last 2 hours are very key to getting enough of those sleep spindles. So this can be a real challenge for people, for example, in high school or different types of schooling where they have to wake up really early. Because a lot of times what happens is these people cut out those last couple hours of sleep. But those last 2 hours are the most crucial to get enough of those sleep spindles and improve your ability to learn. If you're someone who's sleeping 6 hours or less, and specifically if you're going to sleep at a normal time but you're waking up 2 hours early, then you are shortchanging yourself of a lot of these sleep spindles and a lot of your ability to learn the next day. So if you want to improve your ability to learn and make new memories, it's really important to make sure you get those 8 hours of sleep and that you're not forcing yourself to wake up early. I know this can be really hard if you have to go to school or you have to go to work and you're basically forcing yourself to wake up early every single day. I know this is exactly what happened to me when I was in high school. I never was getting enough sleep. But now that you know this information, maybe you can restructure your sleep a little bit so that you're making sure you get those 8 hours. So knowing all this, we can clearly see that sleeping before you're going to learn something is extremely important. And it's going to make you a lot more efficient when you're actually learning. So next time you're studying for an exam or studying for a final or anything in general that involves learning, make sure that you're getting enough sleep beforehand because you might be putting in all those hours of hard work and you're definitely going to be dedicated, but it doesn't mean that your brain is actually able to process all that information. Now, at the same time, sleep is also very important after you're going to learn something. So the way to think about this is sleeping before learning something is basically refreshing your brain, but sleeping after learning something is kind of like hitting that save button on your computer. And there have been a ton of studies that show that sleeping after learning something actually improves your memory retention. So the earliest study that we know of dates back to 1924 with two German researchers, John Jenkins and Carl Dallenbach. So basically what they did is they took these participants and they had them learn this list of random facts. And they either had them stay awake or they had them get a full night, 8 hours of sleep. And they wanted to see how quickly and how much information they would forget over those 8 hours. So they found some interesting results. The group that stayed awake the whole time, they had this initial decline in their memory, but then that decline wouldn't stop. It kept accelerating the whole amount of time. But the group that went to sleep after learning, they had that same initial decline, but then it kind of staggered off. So they had that constant level of memory even after that initial decline. And basically what they found is the sleep was helping cement a lot of those memories that people learned. And the interesting thing here is that same group that stayed awake, after they went to sleep, they found that their memory actually improved. And tests like this have been repeated many times throughout the years. And what all these studies are showing is the memory retention benefit you get from sleeping is about 20 to 40%. So in other words, people who go to sleep after learning something, they're able to remember things 20 to 40% better than people who stay awake after learning. So again, if you are someone that has to study for an exam or study for your finals, etc., you can use a lot of this knowledge to your advantage. You can see that, first of all, sleeping before you're going to learn in the first place, you're going to be able to cram all the information in a lot better. But then sleeping after, you can see that this information is not only staying in your brain, it's going from an area of short-term storage to your area of long-term storage. This is how you can most efficiently cram in all that information into your brain, both sleeping before you're going to learn something and also sleeping after you learn something. And it doesn't always have to be a full 8 hours of sleep. Even short naps for up to 20 minutes have been shown to improve your learning ability. Why do we need sleep in the first place? So first of all, sleep is not a negotiable thing. We need sleep, period. And there's actually evidence that if we do not sleep, it can directly kill us. So there's a rare genetic disorder that people can get. It's called fatal familial insomnia. Basically, this disorder starts